All right, it's showtime, and there's no time like the present. We're going to hope the microphone's on. We know the camera's working. Let me check my hair. It looks terrible as always, and it's getting thinner every day. Let's cut this bad boy off and get the live show going here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, our weekly live show. We do it every Wednesday night at 8:30. Me and Jim Hammett get together for a little Pitt sports talk with you. Jim will be joining us in a minute here while I warm up the crowd. I come out first. I'm like the hype man. Get everybody fired up and excited, and then we bring in Jim for the big show. So that's my job out here. And yeah, my way of hyping you up is to tell you to like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You guys feel the excitement when I say that? Subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I mean, we have a lot of Pitt video content. We have something for you every day. There's the morning Pitt video every day of the week, Monday through Friday. We get live shows like this one on Wednesday night, or our post-game show on Saturday. Those are always fun. And I always joke. I don't joke, actually, because it's true. We just sit around and drink and talk about Pitt sports. So I don't joke about that. That is what we do on the post-game show. But it's sometimes I sit down here for the Wednesday night show, and I'm like, why don't we drink on Wednesday nights too? And this isn't going to be a big reveal. I'm going to pull the bottle of whiskey out and we're drinking on Wednesdays now. I mean, it's a school night. We got to be responsible. But why don't we do that? I don't know why we don't drink during the Wednesday night live show. I guess, this is like the professional show. I tend to think the post-game shows, it's just sort of loose and freewheeling, and who knows what we might say or what might come up. And so it makes a little more sense. And after a game, I mean, I think a man, if he can have a cold drink after a long day of football, and makes him feel a little more like a man or something. What's that quote from Shawshank? Something like that. Maybe I'll bring in Jim in a second. I'll ask him if he knows the quote from Shawshank. Quick poll. How many of us think Jim has seen Shawshank? Anyway, we'll ask him that question too. He's going to run over and try and watch it as fast as he can and figure out what Shawshank is. But anyway, no, man, we already got comments and questions rolling in. Look, we got so much to talk about tonight. People are already jumping in. It's probably because I made a Miles Davis reference on Twitter as the final promo for the show. But everybody's jumping in. We got comments and questions. We obviously have a lot to talk about because Pitt was nice enough to go and fire their athletic director during Backyard Brawl week, and the same week that Pitt gets a basketball commitment. Oh, geez. Thanks for doing all of these things all at once. But I'm not going to complain because we have a lot to talk about tonight. The Cincinnati game, the Backyard Brawl coming up, Pitt getting a hoops commit today, Pitt firing the athletic director. This is a busy week, and we're already going to have a lot to talk about just with the Backyard Brawl, but now you add all those other things in, we get a lot to talk about as well. Remember, get into the comment section right over there. A lot of people already have. If you want to comment on the show, make a comment, ask questions, any of those things. We'll respond to as much as we can over the course of the next hour. But if you want to make sure we read your comment or answer your question, you can be a super chatter. Click that little $sign down there, kick a couple bucks to the podcast, and we will make sure we get to your comment or your question. All you guys posting comments and questions, we'll probably get to you guys because we'll do all the super chatters, and then we'll just kind of go through chronologically who posted a question or a comment first. But as we go through the show, if you guys add stuff later in the show, we may or may not get to it. So if you want to make sure we read your comment or answer your question, be a super chatter, and we will, definitely get to it as we go through the show. And so what else do I need to tell you? Panther-Lair.com. Don't forget the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are hanging out on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com talking about Pitt sports. So if you're a Pitt fan, and why else would you be hanging out here on a Wednesday night at 8:30 if you weren't? But if you're a Pitt fan, you want to talk to other Pitt fans, get in the Pitt conversation, the place to do it. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Here, I'm going to do this one real quick before we bring Jim in. Jason Weinberg says, my mom wants to know what the NA Chaser was called from the other day. Now, Jason says, my mom wants to know what the NA Chaser beer was called from the other day. So during the post-game show on Saturday after the Cincinnati game, we do our shot of the game, our Backshore Apparel shot of the game, and we chase it with something, and usually I have a beer. But this time, actually what we had, it was from Voodoo Brewery. I don't even know what they call it. It's like their hop water. It's not even an NA beer. It's not even a non-alcoholic beer. It's water infused with hops. It's gluten-free. It's non-alcoholic. I'm going to give them a shout out again today because I'm going to be honest, I liked it a lot more than I expected to. I didn't think I was going to like it. And I don't want to, disrespect our friends at Voodoo Brewery because they're awesome and they make awesome products. But I was like, they were like, hey, you should check out this hop infused water. And I was like, okay, thanks. Sure. Like, I appreciate the support. Yeah, I'll check it out. I was like, hey, this is pretty good. It's like water with hops. So I don't know if they have like a name to it. I think it's just hop water. But I think if you go on the Voodoo Brewing website, you can probably find it. If you poke around a little bit, look for the hop water. But yeah, it was good. It's not beer. It's hop water. All right, let's bring Jim in. Have you seen on my audio here so I can hear you? Have you seen Shawshank, Jim?
I feel like that's one of those movies like you start watching on TV for a couple hours because it is like a 4-hour movie. Like I don't know I feel like it's a long movie.
I've never thought of it as such, but I'll look it up. Go ahead, continue your story.
So I don't know if I've ever sat down and watched it like start to end, but like I have seen it, like Andy Dufresne. Like I know what's going on.
Good job. You Googled that. Well, I gave you a lot of lead time to Google the. You couldn't Google the runtime. It's 2 hours and 22 minutes, so it's not exactly like Dances with Wolves or anything. But anyway, well, he's got a line in there. After he he gets beer for the guys after they're tarring the roof. When he's like, I think a man has a beer after a long day of work feels more like a man, or something like that. So I think a man, you have a beer after a football game. It's weird. Most people drink beer during football games. But for us, it's like, no, we can't do that. But that beer after the football game, it's like a beer after work. But all right, Jim. So like they had to pick Backyard Brawl week to fire the athletic director. Like they couldn't do this like next week when it's Youngstown State week, or even better, the week after. Like why not do it? Like I'm thinking totally from like a personal and like professional like viewpoint. Like we produce content, right? And we have certain content goals we're trying, like we like to get 3, 4, 5 unique pieces of content out every day, right? That's typically what we go for. Football season, we tend to it's a little bit easier to produce content, so we get more than that. Today we had a ton of content up there. I mean, even before the basketball commitment, we got a couple more out of that. So when we get to the bye week, though, we'll be a little bit shorter on content. So why not wait and fire your AD then? And then that helps us boost up our content during an otherwise quiet time. Don't do it during Backyard Brawl week. We have more than enough to write about this week. So my first reaction was when they announced the news on Monday morning was, you're doing this now? Like, you want to do it. But why not wait until the off week for me? I feel like it was very inconsiderate. Was that your first interaction as well? Like, boy, that's inconsiderate of you guys to do this right now.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, that last week of September, I mean, I don't know what we're going to talk about. We have a little bit of a bye, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess like decisions like that are made. I mean, do you want I guess, lame duck athletic director mingling with your biggest donors on your biggest home game? I don't know. I mean, like, as far as I know, like Heather did not see this coming. I don't know if we saw this coming, like because we talked last week. We're like, I guess she's the AD for the school year, but like she didn't have a contract. But we're like, I don't know. We're like 2 weeks into this. Like every fall sport started, it kind of felt like, okay, she quietly signed her 1-year deal and they're just going to go through with it. But obviously that wasn't the case. I was at the game in Cincinnati and she was there. Business as usual, sitting up in the box. She was in the press conference with Pat Narduzzi after the game. Nothing about her actions made it seem like I am about to lose my job. And of course, she had no idea. So I think those conversations were probably had Sunday night and it was announced Monday morning. And here we are. Pitt needs an athletic director right in the middle of the school year.
It might have even been like Monday morning. Like I think it might have even happened like on a shorter timeline than that. And it's pretty remarkable. I was looking back over like previous AD hires. They typically take a few months. Like these things don't happen quick. I feel like Scott Barnes was hired or announced as hired in like April after Steve Peterson was fired in December. You know what I mean? You're looking at a 4-month lead time there. I feel like with Heather it was similar. Barnes might have left spring, right? I think it was late in the basketball season or maybe after the basketball season. I remember it was being reported that he was going to the Oregon State job. And I remember we asked Kevin Stallings about it. And there was only like 3 of us there. Like that's how low the interest was in Pitt athletics. and Pitt basketball at that point, because like this was, it was being reported the athletic director was leaving. Here was an opportunity to talk to the head basketball coach, and like nobody was there. There was like three of us in the room, and even then he was sort of like defiant and indignant. He's like, if it's going to happen, I'll know about it before you do. Trust me. Well, maybe you did, Kevin, and maybe you knew about it right then. But either way, I think these things can take a little while. There's part of me that thinks Joan Gable doesn't make this move unless she already has somebody in mind. But there's another part that thinks she's going to search a little bit and take her time. There's no real rush, but there also kind of is, right? Like, what would be a reasonable timeline, you think, to get this hire made?
I don't know, like kind of around New Year, like you kind of want to get through football season and maybe going into the spring year, going into, the stretch run of basketball with, having someone in charge, I think would be probably a fair timeline they're shooting for. So I don't know that gives them like 3 months. And I don't know. I feel like that's kind of standard with an administrative hire. I mean, obviously through the years, we've been more focused on assistant coaching hires, maybe a basketball hire and things like that. And those take time on their own, but I think this one's a little bit different. So I know there's like already been names, speculated and names on our board and names on Twitter. And I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be one of those names that's like Pitt adjacent. Like everyone's like, oh, it's going to be, whenever a job opening like this happens, it's always like, well, who's connected to Pitt? Who do we know? Who should we hire? And I don't know if it's going to be quite that simple, because what does Joan Gable know about any of them? I mean, like it's not important to her to get someone from Pitt to run the job. She's trying to get the best possible person she can find to run the job. So yeah, there's names out there, I'm sure, and we're going to see all those articles and speculation, but I don't know. It might take a couple weeks till we start kind of getting like real names.
Yeah, I agree. And there's some questions in here about some candidates, so we'll get to those. I do want to do this. Brock was a super chatter, so we always give the priority there. Says, I saw Elijah Dotson was at Michigan last weekend. Do you expect him to be up for a game this year? Will there be any mystery recruits visiting for the Brawl? So yeah, Elijah Dotson, Pitt commit, went to the Michigan-Texas game last weekend, because why wouldn't you, right? I mean, that was a pretty awesome game. I think he's probably going to go to other college games. He's going to be one of these guys, and we probably said it from the time he committed, he's going to be one of these commits that are you're going to be battling to hold on to it. Doesn't mean it's impossible to keep him, but you're going to be fighting for it. He is going to be at the Backyard Brawl this weekend. You ask, do I expect him to be up for a game? Yeah, he's on our list. Brock, you should check out our list on Panther-Lair.com, because I added him in there today. And so I think we've got 25, 26 guys that are confirmed, a lot of the committed class, a bunch of local recruits in the 2026 and 27 class, mystery recruits visiting for the Brawl. I mean, there'll be more than the 25 or 26 that we've confirmed so far. We'll probably confirm a couple more between now and Saturday, and we'll see a few more on Saturday. There are always surprises, and so, yeah, there probably will be. I don't know if there'll be anything crazy like, oh, the number one recruit in the country showed up, but guys that Pitt wants to get, particularly younger guys in those sophomore and junior classes, yeah, I think they'll have those guys there. And like I say, Dotson's going to be a battle, but he'll be here. He'll be here this weekend. Chris is not me. Different Chris is a super chatter, says, guys, which candidates to replace Heather Lyke would be considered home run hires? I hope Pitt opens up the wallet and gets a top tier person. So I can't sit here and tell you who would be a home run hire. I wouldn't pretend to have, because like the guys I know about are the ones with Pitt connections, right? Like I would mention the same names that everybody else has talked about. Dan Bartholomew, the AD at Western Michigan, Marcus Bowman, the CFO, and top assistant AD at Oklahoma. Like, yeah, these are people I know about and you know about, and we know about them because they're Pitt people and they've been here and we're aware of them. I think there are great candidates out there and probably great people who are positioned to lead an athletic department into this new era of college sports. And I'm not going to sit here and say I know any names off the top of my head. I can tell you what they would be, like what kind of AD they would be. They would be someone ideally that have experience leading an athletic department, and failing that, they would have experience at being at or near the top of a prominent, successful athletic department. But even more than that, because go back and forth sometimes, Jim, like do you want someone like what's preferable? Like somebody who worked in a place like Alabama or Ohio State or Texas, where there are a lot of built-in advantages, or someone who maybe worked like in a place like Georgia Tech, right? Where comparable situation, they're in a city, they're probably not the biggest program in their state. They get overshadowed a little bit as a result, but they've learned how to work with those challenges and embrace those challenges. We've seen some of the NIL wins that Georgia Tech has had in recent months, right? So that's what I think you want. Like you want someone who's shown an ability to embrace and develop and use NIL. You want someone who's got a concrete plan for how they're going to handle revenue sharing. You've got someone who seems to really have their finger on the pulse of where college athletics is going. That's what I'm looking for. I don't know who that person is. Maybe you do, Jim, but I'm looking for someone who checks those boxes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I don't know the names of administrators, but you brought up two different kinds of candidates, and I kind of agree with more of the latter. It's you mentioned someone like Georgia Tech. Like I think you need to get someone from a program like that knows how to kind of stretch something good. Like we're not in the same ballpark as Georgia or Penn State or Michigan. Like we have to figure out different ways to go about that. So I don't know. I mean, the ideal candidate is someone with that kind of experience, someone that has some business sense, and someone that's going to be visible. I think that's important to this whole thing as well. I mean, I think whenever, each program is led, like, you see Pat Narduzzi, you see Jeff Capel, but like Pitt as a whole, Pitt athletics as a whole, I think you kind of want that person that is going to be strong, that's going to be at games, that's going to be meeting with people, that's going to give interviews, that's going to, speak their mind. And I think that's kind of what they're looking for. So I don't know. I mean, going back throughout this whole week, 2 weeks, I mean, I think Heather was pretty good at her job. I really do. I think she did a lot of great things for this program and elevated in different ways, but I think a lot of things in college sports changed and it kind of brought on a new skill set needed.
Yeah, and that's kind of I was thinking about this a little bit earlier today. It is different hiring an AD in 2024 as opposed to 2017, because in 2017, you didn't know all of these changes were coming. Even if you had an inkling that at some point there would become some sort of money going to the student athletes, you didn't know what it was going to look like or where it was headed or how it would kind of turn out. Now you know what that landscape is. Like now you know what the situation is, you know the parameters and the circumstances. And so you can hire someone who's specifically sort of tuned into that. And I think that's an advantage in the hiring process now, because it's not like, oh, we hired this person 7 years ago. I hope they've got an idea of how to approach this new scenario. It's not what it was 7 years ago. The sport is not what it was the industry is not what it was 7 years ago. So you can hire someone who's got a real sense of where things are right now. I mean, like we said, I don't know who that is, but I think it's an advantage that you know what the playing field is and you know what you need. I think Joan Gable knows what she needs. I hope she knows what she needs this athletic director to be. We got another super chatter from Chris. Chris says, guys, for my money, if you have an okay candidate from Oklahoma versus one from a small school like Western Michigan that lights it up, I want the Western Michigan guy. I get what you mean. You need whoever can check those boxes we just talked about. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about you, Jim. I'm not narrowing I only want an SEC guy. I only want a Big Ten guy. I want a guy or woman who gets it. Somebody who gets it. And like you said, I think you made a good point about being a leader, a front-facing, a forward-facing voice of the athletic department leader, to be out there, and be out front. Like we've recounted the number of times Heather spoke publicly. Her public comments, at least the local media. It was last November when she gave a statement to the Post-Gazette, like a one-sentence statement via email about Pat Narduzzi's job security. There was last August when Noah Hiles shadowed her for a day or something. And then the previous, last April, and all these things are in 2023. Last April, she sat down to unveil the new Victory Heights renderings and seemed shocked when she was asked questions about contracts and things like that. She thought it was just supposed to be a big circle, you know what, for the Victory Heights project. And that was it. I mean, like of the last 2 calendar years, 2024 and 2023, that's all we got. I mean, that's not being, forward facing, visible leader. That's not strong leadership at all, particularly locally. And so they need someone who's willing to embrace that. Joshua Brown says we should move on to WVU. We'll get there in a second. Okay. But this question, Jim, how enticing is Pitt athletics for a potential AD candidate? Surely they have a lot more good things going on than something like a Northwestern who just filled their AD. What do you think? How enticing is that job?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's still, a Power 5 job, Power 4 job. It's a coveted job. I mean, it's a program that just, produced the football championship in its conference a couple years ago. I mean, there's a great history of success in basketball. It's just a few years removed, but like, I don't know. And obviously what Heather did of, keeping the other sports kind of visible. So, I mean, I think it's a good job. It's, you're living in a city, you're working for a major university. I mean, I think you're going to get candidates. It's not like a ghost town. You're not like trying to pull someone to like Pullman, Washington or Lubbock, Texas. I mean, it is a job. It's in a city, in a major conference at a major university. I mean, I think it's going to, attract a pretty good candidate pool.
I would think so too. I would think so too. ZC717 says, is it true that Marcus Bowman is the front runner for the AD? Andrew Filipponi put on Twitter that a reliable source told Chris Muller that he is the front runner. What have you heard? I saw that tweet too. Here's what I would say about Marcus Bowman. Obviously, former Pitt basketball player, came up in the Pitt athletic department, spent a lot of time here, moved on. I think he was at UNLV for a little bit. He's at Oklahoma now. He's in a pretty prominent position in the athletic department at Oklahoma. He's a CFO, which I think gives him an important sort of perspective and background for the job. I think there is a lot of internal and external support for Marcus Bowman. I think Joan Gable is hearing the name Marcus Bowman a lot. I think Marcus Bowman's ears are ringing a lot right now. I don't know what Joan Gable thinks of Marcus Bowman. I think there are a lot of people pushing for him, but the one person who's going to make this decision, I'm not sure. There's no connection there, right? Like, there's no connection between Joan Gable and Marcus Bowman. That doesn't mean that he's not a candidate or not a good candidate or anything like that. I don't think he's the front runner. Like I said, they fired her. Maybe Joan Gable already has someone in mind. I kind of don't think that's the case, that she has anyone in mind. And if she did, I don't think it would be Marcus. And again, not as any slight on him, but just like, she doesn't know him. Like, who is he to her? And that doesn't mean she has to hire someone she knows, but to be a front runner, like if you told me like the Minnesota AD who she hired and worked with is the immediate early front runner, I would say, okay, I buy that. But someone she's never worked with, who she only kind of knows because people at Pitt are telling her he's awesome, I'm not sure he would be the front runner right now. But I think he'll be considered because I think she's probably hearing about him a lot,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's too early to call like a front runner. Like like Heather was let go on Monday and it's Wednesday night. Like, I don't know. I don't think it's that far along to the point where, people are tweeting that Marcus Bowman's the leading candidate for the job. Like, this thing is not going to get finalized anytime in the next month or two. Like, yeah, he might get an interview. He might get put into consideration, but it's way too early to even go that far.
Yep. I agree. All right. Let's flip. I think there's other questions in here about, the AD thing, and maybe we'll get to that as we go. But let's go to Finkel Studios. Says the Backyard Brawl determined a lot last year. Pitt went on to stink, and West Virginia had a good season. The momentum of our season depends on this game. If Eli is on point, we'll be good. So I don't know about the momentum of the season, Jim. I don't know if I agree with that or not. But the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 words in that sentence, if Eli's on point, we'll be good. I think absolutely, because the thing I keep coming back to about this game is West Virginia's rushing attack. Like, we know they're going to run the ball. CJ Donaldson over the last 2 years is averaging almost 10 yards per carry against Pitt. He's 25 carries for 225 yards. It's literally 9.6 yards per carry in 2 games against Pitt. I mean, it's ridiculous. Jaheim White didn't carry the ball against Pitt last year, but he ended up averaging, I think he ran for 800 yards, averaged between 7 and 8 yards per. I mean, they're going to run the ball. And I'm not entirely convinced that this Pitt defense can stop the run effectively. I think the only thing that really stopped Cincinnati's rushing attack on Saturday was Scott Satterfield, who complained about the refs, but should have been complaining about his own play calling, because if he kept handing the ball off, they'd probably win that game. Shout out to him for throwing it and stopping the clock a bunch of times and giving the ball back to Pitt. But that's another story. I mean, we could talk about the Cincinnati game. I'm not sure if Pitt's going to consistently and effectively stop West Virginia's rushing attack. Their best approach is probably going to be forcing Neil Brown to stop the rushing attack by scoring. And so, yes, Finkel Studios, if Eli Holstein's on point, I think Pitt will be good because it'll force West Virginia to get away from the run. I think Pitt will fare better against West Virginia's passing attack, although I have questions there about the pass rush. But I think this game comes down to entirely Pitt's offense. I think that's what's going to win or lose this game, is whether the offense can move the ball like they did for the final 20 minutes of the Cincinnati game.
Yeah, I mean, looking at West Virginia's defense, they struggled against Penn State, and they weren't exactly great against Albany. I think they gave up 300 yards to Albany in passing. So, yeah, I mean, I think if Pitt can keep the pressure on, I think that kind of negates Donaldson a little bit. I mean, he has 7 career 100-yard games, and 2 of them are against Pitt. So, like, he really gears up for this game. This is kind of his time to shine. But, yeah, we know exactly how West Virginia is going to attack Pitt. It's the exact same way Cincinnati attacked them for 3 quarters the other game. I mean, they're going to test the young corners, and they're just going to try to, just run it up their gut and see what happens. So, I mean, that's what's going to happen. But if Pitt can not wait until the 4th quarter to start doing things on offense and put the pressure on, I have questions that Garrett Green and that West Virginia offense can match them, blow for blow. I mean, I think they'll have their success. I think they'll get some big plays. Obviously, they're going to get probably some big runs in there. But, like, if it comes to a point where, like, I don't know if, like, Pitt scores a touchdown on, like, 3 straight drives like they did on Saturday, I don't know if West Virginia is going to match it 3 straight times as well. So, yeah, it really comes down to the offense and just Pitt executing. I mean, we saw they don't execute, it can look really ugly, and that's exactly what happened in the first half.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was looking at some of the numbers on Pro Football Focus from the Cincinnati game, and Pitt was like pretty much feast or famine against the pass. Like they blitzed more than 60% of the time when Brendan Sorsby dropped back. And when they blitzed, he completed like less than 40% of his passes. He only completed 9 passes. He was 9 of 23 against the blitz, according to Pro Football Focus. But of those 9 passes, 3 of them went for touchdowns. So all of his touchdown passes. So it was like, if they blitzed, it was cool. They got there. If they blitzed and they got there, it was cool. They were effective. They held him under 40% passing. But if they didn't get there, if Cincinnati picked up the blitz and kept him clean, he threw touchdown passes. So it was really like sack or touchdown. And I've said that before about Pitt's defense. Oh, that's feast or famine. They're going to sack or touchdown. But that's really what it was when they blitzed. And it felt like they couldn't get pressure without blitzing, which when you look at the numbers, like, yeah, Pitt's leaders in pressures this season are almost all linebackers. So it felt like they couldn't get pressure without blitzing. But when they blitzed, they couldn't cover. So they were kind of stuck in this weird place where they didn't know what they wanted to do. Now, I think Cincinnati's receivers, and you saw them in person, so I mean, I'd like to hear from you about this. Their receivers and their tight end were better than what West Virginia has. Like, I think Henderson, Burkhalter, and Royer, especially the tight end, like Scott Satterfield should have been fired after that game. That tight end should have had like 4 touchdown catches. I mean, he could have scored every possession against Pitt, and the fact that he caught 1 touchdown, right? Yeah. And how many passes total? He caught 3 passes for 49 yards. I think we talked last week that I didn't think Satterfield was a very good coach. I just don't think much of him. And like that dude has 3 catches for 49 yards. He should have had the like Konate Mumfield numbers. It should have been like 8 for 123 and 3 touchdowns. He should have been Big 12 like receiver of the week. And it was criminal that they did not do more with that. But I don't even know. Oh, so I think Cincinnati's skill guys, particularly the receivers and tight end, are better than what West Virginia has. I forget if I was going to lead into a question with that. I mean, you agree? I mean, like that was a bigger challenge than what West Virginia will present.
Yeah, I mean, I think the strength of the West Virginia offense is obviously those two running backs. But you look at their wide receivers, their pass catchers. I mean, no disrespect at all, but like their leading receiver is a former walk-on, like redshirt freshman walk-on. So like that's like, I'm sure he's a fine player and he deserves to be at this level. And they have a big 6'7" tight end, Cole Taylor, but like I think Joe Royer is better. I thought Xavier Henderson's like probably going to be one of the better receivers they play all year. And like I mean, shout out to Sorsby. I mean, that dude had like some really good throws, like that, like low percentage throws that he dropped in there. That touchdown to Ryland Gandy. I mean, that was kind of like the perfect pass. I mean, it was down the sideline. Gandy was kind of step for step on him, and he just dropped it in there for like a long touchdown. So I don't know. I mean, I could see where Cincinnati's passing game with their weapons and Sorsby might be more challenging than what West Virginia is going to bring. So again, it's those two running backs that Pitt really, really needs to worry about.
I thought that touchdown Gandy gave up too. After the catch was made, he just kind of gave a little.
He thought he was going to knock him out of bounds.
And he just kind of nudged him and then sort of pulled up because he thought that did it. And then he was like, "Oh crap, he didn't go out of bounds." So he actually could have gotten the kid out of bounds. He didn't have to turn into a touchdown. It was a great play, and sometimes you'll give those up, particularly in this defensive scheme. But like, you got to finish the play and like knock him out of bounds. You give up the pass, that stinks, but you got to make sure he actually gets out of bounds. Swim Boyd as a super chatter says, it seems like NIL isn't creating these super teams like people were maybe worried about. Is NIL maybe hurting some teams that are spending big money? I don't know if it's hurting. I think you got to be wise. It's like any resources. You have to be smart about how you invest them. And the teams that are investing money wisely are the ones that are succeeding and capitalizing. You know what I mean? If you are, Colorado, you're probably not investing your money wisely, and you're not getting, I think they probably have a decent war chest, a decent NIL budget, and they're probably not getting as much as they would have expected out of it, probably because they didn't spend it wisely. But that's a giant mess over there anyway. But no, you're right. It's not creating super teams. I don't know if the money's there to create super teams, even for the teams that have big NIL budgets, So I don't know. I mean, it's obviously being used to entice players, right? And that's just part of it. There's no question about that. But there's only so much money to go around. Schools do have budgets, and so I think that's why you see some of the better transfers scattering. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, there's certain schools you would expect to just like stockpile players. Like they're not always getting like perfect return on investment for some of these guys. Like they just kind of throw money at them, and it doesn't really translate. Like, I mean, we talked all about like some of Pitt's transfers, like Solomon DeShields, like they probably gave them a good chunk of money to go there, and like they're not even using them. So like, I don't know. It's like kind of an embarrassment of riches and kind of a waste at times. Like there are better ways to probably keep the players you have happy than just add players just to do it. So I don't know. I think everyone's still just kind of navigating and figuring out how to build a roster in this era.
Solomon DeShields is listed as a co-starter at middle linebacker for Texas A&M. He has played 11 snaps this season. He didn't play against Notre Dame in the opener. He played 11 snaps against McNeese. He played 594 defensive snaps for Pitt last year, and he has played 11 through 2 games this season. But he got paid.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so you got that. It's wild. All right, Roman. I always go to Roman's comments. I mean, first of all, shout out to him for having the tooth. I mean, you got the tooth logo. That's the best thing from that era. But I always shout out Roman because the first time we did a live stream, he was the first commenter. Roman jumped in there, and I think we started doing live streams, Wednesday night live streams, or the weekly podcast as a live stream 5 years ago. And never once in 5 years have I even attempted to pronounce Roman's last name. So Roman, I mean, you're the only Roman, so you always be Roman. If another Roman shows up, you can be Roman P, or you'll be Roman, and that one, whoever else shows up will be Roman number 2. But we always read Roman's comments because, again, he was the first one. So shout out to him. Roman says Pitt wins 34-31 and announces Marcus Bowman as the new athletic director on the 50-yard line. As the game ends, everyone in the stadium immediately donates $1,000 each to have a new Pitt stadium built. So I saw this comment a minute ago, Jim. Did some quick, back of the envelope math.
Mm-hmm.
There's 70,000 people at the game, all right? Which it'll probably be a few less than that, but let's just call it 70. And every single one of those 70,000 people put $1,000 in the hat as they walked out. You know how much money that would be? Do you know what 70,000 times 1,000 is?
I'm sure you're going to tell me.
It's 70 million. Unless I added that wrong. You add 3 zeros, right? 70,000 plus 3 zeros.
It sounds right. I don't
70
have
million.
a system, yeah.
So if you took that entire stadium and every single person in that entire stadium donated $1,000, I would say they would be maybe 1/10 of the way to a new stadium. Like, I don't think people realize how much a new stadium is going to cost. You would have to have 70,000 people at 7 home games donate $1,000 after every game just to get to $500 million. And you might be close on what it would cost for an on-campus football stadium. So, Roman, that's the part of your plan that's just, I mean, I think a lot of your plan is not going to come to fruition, but that part in particular is not going to come to fruition. They might win. I don't know. I haven't come up with a prediction yet. I keep going back and forth about it. You know what I can't get around, Jim, with this game is that if they win and then they beat Youngstown State, they'll have that undefeated non-conference record for the first time ever. And I just can't bet. I know. Our friend Thunder Pit Road on Twitter, or is that what he calls himself on Twitter?
Yeah.
Tweeted that like, I think it's going to happen. They're going to beat West Virginia and get their first undefeated non-conference. And I was like, why would you do that? And he's like, oh, what are you talking about? I'm like, why would you guarantee a win over Youngstown State? That if they beat West Virginia, you're guaranteeing, like, do you realize what you've done? You have condemned. I almost like, I just can't bet against like 30 years of history. You know, like like if something has not happened for 30 years, I can't come out and bet on. I'm not one of these losers who bet on the Red Sox to win the World Series every year for like 15 years. You know, I just, before it finally happened, I can't bet against 30 years of history. Until it finally happens, I can't assume it's going to happen. And that, as much as anything, gives me pause about this game. Because, look, I'm buying in more and more on this offense. I'm buying in on Desmond Reed. I'm buying in on Eli Holstein. I'm buying in on the receivers. And I'm buying in on the offense being able to do enough to outscore West Virginia, even if the defense gives up 250 rushing yards or something like that. I'm buying in on all of that. The only thing that holds me up is like, man, 30 years of history. I'm gonna bet against 30 years. And you had a good line because you apparently picked West Virginia to win this game. Is that right?
I did, and I joined the West Virginia site, answer some questions for them, and I got a stern talking to from all of our
right
board. Yeah,
but you had a good retort in that thread, Jim. Do you know what I'm referring to?
What did I say? West Virginia is a 3-point favorite. What else did I say?
West Virginia is the 3-point favorite, and Pitt just needed to stage its biggest comeback in 50 years to win against a Cincinnati team that might not be very good. So yeah, so forgive me if I'm a bit skeptical or skeptical or something like that. And I was like, that's a good point. Like, we're all very excited about this offense right now. We're all very excited about Desmond Reed, but they did need a like freaking 50-year, like they needed to do something. Okay, well, all right. So here I am talking about I don't want to bet against 30 years of history, and they just did something that bet against 50 years of history. And by comparison, 30 is not that much. So maybe I should get on board with it. But that's the biggest thing that what gives you the most pause about this game, like specifically this matchup?
I think just kind of the factors that we said. I mean, I think it's like, what if Pitt's run defense really is this poor and like West Virginia just exploits it? What if Eli Holstein starts slow again? I mean, it and just the general craziness that is the backyard brawl. I mean, weird things can happen. That game 2 years ago, like, you usually don't win a game whenever you have a punt blocked to start the second half. Like, usually that's the momentum swing that kind of kicks you down, and somehow Pitt came back from it. So this is just one of those games. And, you know, talking about that, like, non-conference, like, you know, long running record here. It's like the 2021 season, like, they went down to Tennessee and beat the SEC team in front of 90,000 people. Then they lost to Western Michigan. Like, Western Michigan happened after that. So, like, even when you think you're out of the woods, you're not. So like, I don't even want to like talk about that record too much. Like maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but like, I don't know.
Yeah. Travis Spagnolo says, hey, Chris, interested in your thoughts on the outside excitement on this game. Felt like the last 2 years, Backyard Brawl games had a ton of buzz. This year, I feel like nobody cares outside of Pitt, West Virginia Twitter. Well, 2 years ago, they had game day, and it was the first game of the season, right? Was there – I don't know. I mean, was there a ton of buzz last year? Do you remember? Buzz, Jim?
Not like national. I mean, it was just it was a big game for these two programs that was going to be on national TV, which is kind of what it is this year. I mean, I don't know if there's no crazy storyline. There's no like superstar players yet. Maybe Desmond Reed is one of those, but like, there's nothing to like hype this game up. Like Pitt's coming off a 3-win season, and I don't know, West Virginia was just okay last year. So like, I don't know why anyone would be all that excited about it nationally.
Yeah, Pat McAfee, I think, talked about it. So
is he going to be there? Maybe. No, he's like
no, he's probably where game day. Where is game day? Is it in Wisconsin? They go to Wisconsin for that?
It might. We were like trying to figure out like in the press box like where they might go like after Pitt won, and we thought like Backyard Brawl would have been a decent just because it's on their family of networks.
Yeah,
and all that, but suppose not.
Yeah, it's Wisconsin's playing Alabama, right?
Yeah,
so Alabama at Wisconsin. So I guess that's a pretty big game. Alabama doesn't usually go on the road against teams like that, so I guess that's the draw. I don't know. This is one of these things, like, to Travis's question, like, I kind of don't care what the outside hype is. Like, I'm excited. Like, I'm hyped up for this game. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I love everything about it. I love the rivalry. I love, what happens when Pitt and West Virginia play. I love the fact that it's a 3:30 kickoff. I think we've talked about this before about kickoff times and what we prefer. I think 3:30 is maybe my favorite. I like noon because you get done earlier, but I love 3:30. You can get stuff done before, throughout the morning. You can watch some of the noon games. You get that cool like effect of the game starts in daylight and ends in the dark with the lights on, and I think that creates some extra energy and electricity. But you're also not walking out of the stadium at 1 a.m. or something like that. I don't know. I love 3:30 games. I think it's probably my favorite time slot for a game. And so I'm excited about every part of this. I love that, it's cool that Pitt's 2-0. It's, West Virginia's coming off a win, so nobody's like sort of limping into this game. I don't know. I'm excited for it. I'm fired up. Except for maybe the punting. Dan Juby wants to know what's up with the punting unit. Pat Narduzzi said the punting was incredible all summer, and it's been very underwhelming through 2 games. I thought Caleb Junko was fine in the Kent State game, and then he shanked one pretty bad in the Cincinnati game. I don't know what his averages have worked out to, but yeah, you would have liked to have gotten a little bit further into the season before that shank game, because now you feel like it's a possibility that it could happen all the time now. You know what I mean? Like you would have, I would have liked to have seen Caleb Junko be a little more consistent for a while before he has that first sort of mistake. But now, I don't know. Now it sort of feels like it's going to be an adventure anytime he goes back to punt.
Yeah, I mean, I think his first 4 kicks of the season, 2 at Kent State, 2 against Cincinnati, they were kind of hovering around like 43, 44. Then the 12-yard punt happened. And obviously it came at a terrible time because, Pitt was, I think it was in the 3rd quarter. So it was like right after that little push at halftime. You needed okay, you have to punt. Let's pin them deep and try to play defense. It's like, oh, all of a sudden Cincinnati has the ball at the 50. So it's like, I don't know. I think he's been fine otherwise, but yeah, that can happen. And we've seen it happen a couple years now. And I don't know. I don't think they were making it up during camp. I think he was kicking well during camp. I don't know what happens between the practice field and when the lights turn on, but obviously something happens for him.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we've been seeing it for a couple years. The other thing we've been seeing for a couple years is Home Field Apparel making awesome Pitt gear. I don't know, Jim, you probably noticed. Other people probably noticed. You guys have seen this shirt before. The warm up, the victory lights. Is that not sweet, Jim? I mean, can you see that?
Yeah, great shirt.
All right, like the helmet.
I like the old school helmet,
right?
The 1-bar face mask.
Yes, the 1-bar face mask with the script on the side, and it's a blue helmet with the yellow writing. Like it, I always say, like they make these things that have sort of a vintage look, but they're sort of modernized. And even if you can't say, oh, that's that's a Pitt mark or Pitt image that I'm familiar with. It's instantly recognizable as Pitt. And they do this for so many schools. It's awesome. They don't just like mass produce junk. They come out with really interesting, unique, creative logos and graphics that just look so cool. I mean, and I've been raving about Home Field for years. People are probably sick of hearing about it, but you're going to keep hearing about it because they keep turning out awesome stuff. And like I say, it's super soft. And it's funny, this shirt, they always put it on really high quality material. And this shirt, this Warm Up the Victory Lights shirt, I have been wearing for years. If you go back and look through old live streams when I would do promos for Home Field, I have this shirt on and it still holds its shape. It hasn't like shrunk. It hasn't gotten, you know how like t-shirts, you wash them too much, they loosen up around the waist. I hate that. This shirt still fits perfectly. It's one of the best t-shirts I own. I love it. And Home Field, that's what they do. Their t-shirts, their sweatshirts, their hats, their joggers, jackets, koozies, whatever they are. It's the highest quality stuff and it looks awesome. And if you go to homefieldapparel.com, use the promo code PIT24, you're going to get 15% off your first order. I mean, so you get the best stuff, the best Pitt gear you're going to find, and you get it at a discount, 15% off with the promo code PIT24. So go check it out right now, homefieldapparel.com. Ethan Andre comes in as a super chatter, says, what do you think Pitt would have to do in their schedule to get ranked? I mean, I don't think they're getting, I mean, I think like they're not getting ranked before they're 4-0 or 5-0, right? I mean,
it's not happening this month. So like they would have to win these, you know, beat West Virginia, beat Youngstown State, and probably beat North Carolina. And 5-0, you're probably talking, but
5-0 with 2 power conference wins on the road, right? I mean, 3 power conference wins overall, 2 on the road. It's a couple other. Justin E says win the next 3. Will Z says go 5-0. I think that's probably when you might receive votes. Excuse me, if you're 4-0. Like I don't think anybody's going to be inspired by Youngstown State, but they might look down the here's a 4-0 team. You know what I mean? Oh, and they beat 2 Big 12 teams. Okay, they might get a few votes, but let's see. Isaac Steinkamp says if Pitt beats West Virginia by 40 on national TV in a week when there are no big games other than Wisconsin and Alabama, I feel like we get ranked. I don't know. I don't think it'll get ranked. I think 5-0 is probably that target. You got to go beat North Carolina, which would be pretty remarkable if they could get there. But obviously, you got to get past this one first. All right, let's get through more of these comments and questions here. The punting we're asking about. Ryan wants to know about the defense. How do you feel about the defense? They just seem like they aren't finishing plays. Is this normal with not tackling in camp and stuff? I mean, they hit in camp. I don't think they're really. I don't think there's an issue with not tackling in camp. They do plenty of that. I don't know. I mean, I think some of it is just early season stuff. I think the linebackers have been fine. The corners are doing what the corners do in this defense. You know, it's unforgiving, particularly when guys are new playing in it or don't have as much experience. I think the safeties could be a little bit better. My biggest issue, again, still is the defensive line. You're just not getting what you need out of the defensive line against the run or the pass. And I think that's what's going to hurt them all season. You know, I think that's going to be the issue until it's not the issue. Maybe by the end of the year, Sincere Edwards is playing well. Maybe some of the young D tackles, they get Sean Fitzsimmons back, might be good at some point. But I just kind of feel like this just might be who they are. I don't know. Do you feel like there's a ceiling they can a ceiling that's higher where they are than where they are right now with the D line play?
Yeah, I mean, I think they can get better. I mean, I think a lot of it is just guys playing big roles for the first time all throughout the front seven. I mean, I think that's why you're seeing a few missed tackles here and there. I mean, you used to have guys like, Rasheem Biles come in and just, block a punt or play a snap here or there. And now he's asked to like play a lot and, diagnose things and not just blitz. And like, there's a lot to it. And there's a lot to it of not going up against your own offense and going up against someone else. Like you can't really take as many chances. So I don't know. I think they're going to get better over time, but by and large, I think the linebackers have been good. I'd like to see a little bit more from the front four. I thought Donovan McMillan had like 1 million tackles last week. I mean, I thought he was pretty good. So I don't know. I think they'll be okay in September and they'll be better by November.
Yeah, I tend to think so too. Let's see. Scrolling through just about here. Roman says Caleb Junko is the same punter we saw last year. I think they were just saying good stuff about him to try and give him confidence boost, but that clearly didn't work. Not sure what else you can do to help. Yeah, I mean, maybe see if these issues continue, you got to see what some of these other guys can do. Maybe like a Cam Guess or someone who shout out to him for getting that hold down on the game-winning field goal. That was that was a big that was big. By the way, I mean, and I know I totally jinxed this today on the morning pick because I talked about it, but like Ben Sauls is money. I mean, like Ben Sauls is just like ice cold right now. Like ice in his veins.
Yeah,
you know, he's not ice cold. He's on fire with ice water running through his veins. Are there any other like bad metaphors I can throw out here or bad cliches? I mean, he knocked that one down from 53 and it didn't even look like he broke a sweat, you know? And like the 35-yard field goal could be even harder given the pressure and everything riding on it, and just high snap, doesn't matter. Guess got it down, puts it through. No problemo. I mean, like, it's funny because I think it was 11 of 16 last year, and he missed 5 the year before, but he made a lot more because he had a lot more attempts in 2022. And then obviously he had the big finish to the season, 15 of 16, made the 5 kicks in the Sun Bowl and all that stuff. He still missed the same number in both of those seasons, but I felt like he didn't have a great year last year. He's off to a great start now. You know, he's already got 5 field goals. He only made 11 last year. So he's almost halfway to his totals from last year. But I'm at the point where, like, you have a drive that stalls anywhere from the 40 and in, you're going to get points out of it, you know?
That's more or less what he said after the game when we interviewed him. He's like, 60 and in, I'm comfortable in a game. Like, he's like in practice, I'll mess around and try to do 65 or more. But like 60 and in, I feel pretty good. And like some of those kicks, like they were good from 60. So like, yeah. I believe him. And like, he has a strong leg. And I mean, low key, like that's actually kind of been a strength for Narduzzi. He's actually had some good kickers, like Kespin, Blewett, like Sauls. Like they're all pretty solid, you know, as far as college kickers go. So yeah. I don't know. I think he's going to keep it up.
Yeah, the 53-yarder, like the announcers were like surprised on TV. Like they were kind of like, "Well, this is a long one. Oh, it's up," and it looked like it cleared by like a lot. Like it wasn't really even all that close. That's like that one that he put off the upright at Virginia in 2022. That was like a 50-yard, 50-something kick. It might have been longer. It might have been 54 or 55. And it wasn't a matter of distance. Just caught the upright. Let's see. Scroll through some of these comments here. Talk is Pitt says, I didn't think West Virginia fans could be as classless as they were when they made a video of an airplane flying into the Cathedral of Learning. I am so pissed off. Excuse my language. Well, so I saw it wasn't a video. It was just a really crappy AI graphic of an airplane flying into, yes, the Cathedral of Learning, but it was like 2 Cathedral of Learnings next to each other. Cathedrals of Learning or Cathedral of Learning? How would that be? Would you pluralize cathedrals? Cathedrals of Learning?
Yeah.
Or Cathedral of Learnings?
I think
I don't know. It's like RBIs, runs batted in, you know, SOBs, you know, like how do you, I guess if you were saying it was a COL, they'd be like, there were 2 COLs there. Yeah. But if you're saying it out, you would say runs batted in. Like, oh, you had 10 runs batted in, you know, or so there were 2 Cathedrals of Learning. I guess that's how it would be. But we never call it COLs. Wonder why that never caught on. People do the Cathy thing all the time, but they never, you notice that? Like nobody ever calls it the COL.
No.
It just occurred. I wouldn't, if you wrote that down, if you wrote down COL, I don't think I would know what you were talking about. If you were like, oh, I'll meet you in front of the COL. I wonder if people at Pitt, like, you think like Pitt administrators do that? Like, meet me down in front of the PEC or the COL.
Somebody might, like someone that's like really not good at texting and is just like still doing like, I'll meet you at COL. Like somebody's doing that. I wonder. I'm trying to think who that is, though.
I mean, they're on lower campus. That's the I've come to learn this over the years, and I don't know if all of them use this, but it's like athletics is upper campus and like university administration is lower campus, which geographically is accurate, but it's weird to hear them refer to each other as such. I can't imagine anyone on upper campus would ever say like, I'll meet you at the COL. But if your office is actually in the COL, maybe you would say that.
Maybe.
I'll have to to look into that. I don't even think. I'm trying to think at Pitt when you took classes there, and they would list like where the class was. I think it just said CL, like CL 1238, and your class was in room 1238 in the Cathedral of Learning. So even then, it didn't say CL. So anyway, let's move on. Roman says the first 4-0 start since 2000 would be massive and would give the starters essentially a 2-week break heading into ACC play. Could turn into a special season. We can talk about it next week. There's no reason to get ahead of ourselves, but like, if it's up to me, there's no way Desmond Reed plays against Youngstown State. I don't care what happens on Saturday, but like, he is not don't even give him shoulder pads. You know what I mean? Like, don't even give him a helmet. Give him a t-shirt. I guess he has to wear his jersey, but like, right. Are you playing Desmond Reed against Youngstown State in 2 weeks?
Couple carries. I mean, he's got to maintain that Heisman campaign.
No, he doesn't. He's
Why
fine.
not?
He's fine. He's like well ahead of everyone in all-purpose yards right now. You know, there's only 2 guys in the whole country averaging 200 all-purpose yards per game. So he doesn't need to do anything. He can just hang out. He can come up and sit with us.
You're taking the Penguins lightly. Nobody should be doing that.
I am, and I will.
Steph Hall, starting safety.
That's true. And he's actually like playing well, I think. Or at least he had to go. Oh, dang it. That reminds me. I got to do the thing where I run down how all the transfers did. I haven't done that this week. I got time tomorrow morning. I'll do that in the morning tomorrow. Listen, just because it's already like it's almost 9:30. Pick out a commitment today. Basketball commitment. Omari Witherspoon, right? Tell us what do you got about Omari? Omari, right? Omari. Omari Witherspoon. What do you think of this commitment for Pitt? 6'4" guard out of the DMV.
Yeah, kind of, profiles a lot like the last time they got a 6'4" guard out of the DMV, who's currently playing for the Washington Wizards. So, he's a tall, lanky guard. He likes to shoot. I think he can handle the ball a little bit. So he's kind of in that bit, kind of like where Carrington was in high school. He's like, he's playing shooting guard, but he could probably play point guard too. So I thought it was a good commitment. He had a bunch of Power 5 offers. A lot of schools were interested, and he visited 2 weekends ago. He was there like for the Kent State game, I believe. So I think it's a good ad. I think it's a good start to the recruiting class. I mean, I think it got started a little bit later than some were hoping for, but like we said before, September's kind of the time when this starts to happen for, college basketball recruiting. And I think there's a couple more in the coming weeks that we're waiting on. I know Derek Dixon has long been a prominent target in this, for this class for Pitt. And I think he's committing at the end of the month. So there could be more news coming up. But I don't know. I thought it was a really good start, and just kind of goes with the type of guards they've been landing. He kind of looks like Bub. He kind of looks like Braden Cummings. I mean, he's like that tall, lanky shooter. Yeah, he's big. I think he's like kind of a physical guy. He can defend and get out and run, and I think he can play the point or be off the ball. It's a nice pickup. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's good start to the class, and figured they'll probably add another guard, right, to the class. I would think, right? I mean, that seems like what the priority is, right? That's all the guys they brought in have been guards, right? Yeah, I think the tallest person that they're even recruiting right now is 6'6". So it's pretty obvious that, one, they have a lot of big guys that can return, after this upcoming season. They have multiple years of eligibility. And 2, that's kind of where you go in the transfer portal. I don't know what value Pitt would be getting in recruiting high school bigs anymore. I mean, you can take a flyer here or there, but like for the most part, you're going to fill out your roster with your height in the transfer portal. You're going to get guys like Cam Corrin. So I don't look at that as a concern. So I think they're going to keep trying to do the high school guard thing, do the Carrington, Lowe, Cummings, and just kind of build your program around those guys and fill in the gaps. Yeah. It was funny there. I think one of the photos Witherspoon put on Instagram or one of those places, he's taller than Jeff Capel. So he might even be like 6'5", because Capel's not short. I mean, he's got decent height to him, you know? So that might be, it's another big guard, which they've done, like you mentioned. I mean, they've brought a number of these guys in. I mean, Jalen Lowe is kind of the exception there. I mean, he's sort of the small guard, but Bub Carrington and like you mentioned, Brandon Cummings. I mean, some big guys. So good pickup for Capel there. I mean,
If again, like, why do all these things have to happen during Backyard Brawl week? You know, like, we could have done just this episode just talking about the Backyard Brawl, but instead we were trying to fit in, we're trying to fit in athletic director talk and basketball recruitment talk. What do you think about Wolf HD? He says he wouldn't mind Malik Thomas.
Sure. I don't think Jeff Capel would mind either.
I don't think anyone would mind Malik Thomas coming to Pitt, but I mean, it's a non-zero chance, but it's pretty close though, right?
Yeah, it felt early on that, Pitt had some momentum, but I think as the UConns and, John Calipari at Arkansas started to sniff around, I think it's become less and less likely. In a world pre-NIL, if they had this 5-star in their backyard, yeah, I could maybe buy it, but now that the world has changed, and it's going to be harder to kind of pull those kind of players.
Yep. Sure is. All right. Well, this has been fun. Nice hour of little Pitt sports talk. We appreciate everybody who tuned in. There was a lot to talk about tonight. It was a lot of fun to have these conversations. So thanks to everybody who joined. Thanks to all the super chatters. You guys are awesome. Don't forget, on Saturday night after the game, it's probably going to be, 3:30 game. Probably going to go till, what do you think, Jim? 7:30? If we get lucky, the game should end by 7:30, right?
Yeah, if I'm walking out of like Acrisure 9 something, like, I'll take that as a win.
I have the Kent State game book here. That one went 3:26. So if we could be like walking down to the press conference by 7:00,
yeah,
I'd be like, we're in good shape. And so if that could happen, if that game could be over by 7 or 7:30, we should be able to start the post-game show by 9, I would think, maybe 10:00. But, late night Panther-Lair post-game show, that's always fun. We drink and talk Pitt sports, which what more could you ask for? It's going to be a lot of fun. The game's going to be a lot of fun. The post-game show will be a lot of fun as well. So make sure you like this video and subscribe. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and never miss any of the post-game shows or the morning pits or any of those things. Thanks everybody who tuned in tonight. Jim, thanks to you for your time. As always, hope everybody has a good rest of your Wednesday night, and we will catch up with you tomorrow morning for the morning pit right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com.